Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining this session titled Community Wealth Building for a Racially Just Food System. If you haven't already, please drop your name, pronouns, location, and role in the food system or organizational affiliation in the chat. My name is Melanie Allen, and I'm the Program Director for Black Farmer Fund, and I'll be moderating this event. And I'm honored to be joined by my two colleagues, Allison Dehoney and Steph Wiley. Black Farmer Fund is an emerging community-governed investment fund with a mission to create a thriving, resilient, and equitable food system by investing in Black farmers and food businesses across New York State. What sets our model apart from more traditional funding vehicles is that decisions around funding are led by an investment committee composed of Black food actors from across New York State. We are currently in our pilot phase. So this past year, we were having our first experiences around raising money for the fund, working with our investment committee, which we'll refer to as our pilot community, and moving money into the hands of 8 Black food actors. The intention of today is to share some of the community building work that we have been doing and to hear directly from 2 of our pilot community members, Allison and Steph, who participated in this collective decision-making process. I'd like to begin by sharing a little bit about the history and work of Black Farmer Fund, and then I'll introduce our panelists and we'll hear directly from them about the work that they're involved with. And this will be an interactive session. We'll have a guided panel with a space for Q&A and also a breakout room session towards the end. And we'd love to know who we're sharing space with today. So if you haven't already, please introduce yourself in the chat. And any questions that come up during our presentations can be directed to the chat and will be answered during the Q&A after. So the idea for Black Farmer Fund came from our 2 founders, Karen Washington and Olivia Watkins, 2 farmers who came together and shared frustrations over the limited options for capital assistance for Black farmers. Structural racism and discriminatory practices in the food and agricultural system has resulted in limited access to land and financial and technical assistance, leaving Black farmers marginalized within the agriculture and food industry across the country. In New York State, according to USDA data, out of approximately 57,000 farmers who responded to the census, only 139 are Black, with Black farmers having significantly lower reported income than white farmers. The basis of any food system is the farmers, and the lack of diversity across other areas of the food system stems from the lack of diversity amongst our producers. And this is an issue across the country. The number of Black farms declined from 925,000 in 1920 to less than 36,000 in 2017. And as a result of this, Black farm ownership has declined from 15 million acres in 1920 to 1 million acres reported in 2017. These startling statistics, as well as personal experiences with accessing non-extractive capital, inspired the idea to create a community-governed investment fund that would provide capital that was informed by the historical discrimination that Black folks have experienced for generations, and also funding that was informed by the specific needs of the entrepreneur. Black Farmer Fund is the first Black farmer-led 501c3 community-governed investment fund in New York State, offering financing options that combine grants, debt, and financial education for the advancement of Black food actors. Our work is built around 3 buckets: investing patient integrated capital in Black food actors and offering business development support, empowering through building skills around financial education and collective decision-making for our investment committee, staff, and larger community, and organizing and collaborating with mission-aligned organizations. We recognize that funding is just one of the many gaps that exist for Black food actors and land stewards. So we work in collaboration with other BIPOC-led organizations that serve our communities in the Northeast, and also support Black Farmers United New York State, which advocates for more resources to be directed to Black farmers. Our pilot phase was our first round of receiving applications for funding and working with a community-governed body to make decisions. Our pilot community is a group of 11 food actors from different roles in the food system and representing different parts of New York that came together to not only make initial decisions around funding, but to also develop the criteria that applicants needed to meet in order to be eligible for funding. This criteria, the investment guidelines that the pilot community prioritized when reviewing applications, centered economic justice, community wealth building, and being in good relationship with the environment. And for our pilot fund, we raised a little over $1 million in integrated capital, so a mix of grants and debt capital, and received over 50 applications for funding. 40% of the applications came from folks that identified as farmers or growers, and the others came from herbalists, caterers, and restaurant owners. And our pilot community narrowed these applications down to 8, who we recently announced as our first investment cohort, and we are very excited about that. These 8 incredible farmers, herbalists, and collectives are feeding our communities with environmentally sustainably grown food and culturally appropriate food and practices, making medicine accessible to BIPOC and queer trans communities, and modeling practices and business structures that truly center shared ownership and cooperative leadership. We're going to drop a link in the chat for you all to learn a little bit more about their work. We're in the process of supporting these 8 entrepreneurs, and in addition to finance, they're also receiving business coaching support, and we also hold monthly gatherings for relationship building and networking amongst these different businesses. And Black Farmer Fund is in the process of transitioning from our pilot phase to where we'll be announcing our next round of funding in early 2022. Now I would like to introduce Allison Dehoney, one of our pilot community members. Allison Dehoney has 20 years of professional service experience in key areas of executive leadership, project management, and business development. She has spearheaded 4 business endeavors, the latest of which is Urban Fruits and Veggies, LLC, and Buffalo Go Green, which is a nonprofit organization. Urban Fruits and Veggies has been in operation for 5 years and is involved in several projects throughout the city of Buffalo and Erie County. UFV has an urban farm, mobile produce market that services food apartheid areas and underdeserved communities, bring access to healthy fruits and vegetables and nutrition education. Thank you, Allison, for being here. And I'm going to pass it to you to present.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you, Melanie.
I'm happy to be here. Sorry, are you guys hearing an echo? Okay, good. Okay, as Melanie said, my name is Allison Dehoney, and I am the founder and operator of Urban Fruits and Veggies in Buffalo Go Green, located in Buffalo, New York, on the east side of Buffalo. Next slide, please. So our company history is we started as a not-for-profit, as a for-profit entity, but realized that this food space it's going to be necessary for us to operate as a 501c3 as well. So we created a not-for-profit arm. So our business structure is a hybrid. We first started by purchasing vacant city lots from the city of Buffalo and creating an urban space to grow. We were accepted into the USDA's Disadvantaged Farmer Program, and with our mobile market, we began forming partnerships in the community with some community-based organizations and health providers and insurance companies. And this was necessary because while we are growers, our overarching mission is wellness in underserved communities. And we also felt that these certain types of partnerships were necessary because as we started this work, We initially thought that just bringing access into underserved communities and neighborhoods where food apartheid existed was going to be the answer to a lot of issues that our city and these communities were facing. And we quickly learned that access was just a small part of trying to provide a solution to the problem of lack of healthy food options and health disparities. Next slide, please. So I personally knew that I could operate a business, but I needed some help with agriculture, growing, and I needed technical instruction. So we were fortunate enough to have my very first farm manager, who's been a grower her whole life, and a horticulturalist to kind of take me under his wing and help me learn how to grow crops and grow crops in a sustainable way. And then that would be nutrient dense to give out to the community. Next slide, please. So we have 33 raised bed space and 1 greenhouse at our current location. We are currently expanding to another location, which is approximately 5 minutes away from our current location. And that is going to be comprised of 13 prior vacant city lots. And we will have a mix of soil and hydroponic growing at that location. And it's necessary for us to expand because we can't meet the demand. So these are just a few pictures of our urban farm. Next slide. And we participate in lots of farmers markets throughout Erie, some in Niagara County, which are both cities go neck and neck between 3rd, 4th, and 5th poorest cities in our nation. So the need for access and nutrition and wellness education is extremely high. Next slide, please. So a lot of our work expands in different places. Not only are we growers, food distributors, wellness and nutrition educators, but we've also found ourselves in the food justice and policy space. So some of our current projects take all of those areas and they intersect. For example, our growing food policy from the ground up, where we partner with University of Buffalo, Johns Hopkins, University of Minnesota, and some other community-based organizations to work with the community for a 3-year period and take that information and work on how we can create policy change. We've partnered with a community-based organization in Minnesota because the two cities have a lot of the same disparities and a lot of the same issues. And we felt that partnering with another city would help us learn what works and what doesn't work. And we would have another city to kind of lean on, as Minnesota has Buffalo to lean on. One of the other projects that we're working on is a building and strengthening social and economic sustainability among New York State Black farmers. Again, this work is in activism and land and food justice. So this project is really to help folks who are interested in farming and folks who are farming, to give them support based on what they tell us support looks like, and to build up those farms and create a space for those who are interested in farming to get some support as they start their journey. Another project that is very near and dear to my heart is the Food as Medicine Research Project, where we're partnering with the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus and several doctors at that campus, and it's funded by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. And that is because so much of our work focuses on diet-related diseases, and this project will allow us to concentrate on that. Again, going back to land, working with Cornell and their Farmland for New Generation project, helping folks who are interested, folks of color who are interested in finding land to farm, giving them a place to go to get support for that. Next slide, please. So this slide really puts together the intersection of our work. So one of our recipients of grant and debt funding through Black Farmer Fund was Trinity Farms, and we spent some time at Trinity Farms this year. And this was one of our experiences. This little guy and his two loving goats were like the highlight of that day. And the photo next to it is our growing food policy from the ground up colleagues at my urban farm on a Sunday morning, just hanging out and strategizing about the project and where we're going, and some of the things that we hope will be a result of this 5-year work together. And this, these folks are from Johns Hopkins, University of Buffalo, and two of our community-based organizations. So with Black Farmer Fund, providing access to land, and then working on the policy side to see how we can affect change in that area is a beautiful cross-section of some of our work. Again, these are just some of the areas of social justice that we work on. One of the things that we worked on in 2020, and Melanie, I'm just gonna check my time. Okay, is the New York State Diversity and Racial Equity Working Group that we worked on to provide a strategic plan to then Governor Cuomo, and we're hoping that that document has landed on Governor Hochul's desk. But we spent several months working on a plan and meeting to discuss past histories and how we can put policies and practices in place to eradicate some of those past traumas and work towards a brighter future for agriculture and the food space in New York State. Next slide. So I mentioned that our work crosses lots of spaces, and one of the things that is necessary for us to stay have forefront of mind are the social determinants of health, because as we go about the community providing nutrient-dense, pesticide-free produce, we're giving out our education and talking about great things that you can do with this produce and cooking demonstrations. We have to keep in mind the social determinants of health, because what happens is we find out that someone in our audience or someone who's been purchasing from us does not have a stove. So what does that look like for that person? And how can we connect them with services to help them with the things that prevent them from taking healthier steps in their life? Next slide. So one of the great things that has happened over the past couple of years is our partnership with the Buffalo Bills Foundation, where they support us in helping us communicate nutrition education, healthy meal options. We worked with the Buffalo Bills to find out how they stay healthy, what they like to eat, and we communicate that out to our folks in our fruits and vegetables prescription program. With the pictured here in the orange is Dr. Lenora Ansari, who runs our federally funded clinic that we've been in partnership with the past 5 years. Next slide, please. And then we work closely with our municipal officials. This is Councilman Wyatt, who is a big supporter of our work and is very interested in helping the community become healthier and getting access to healthy food options. And he takes a lot of his discretionary funds that he has for his councilmatic district and we work in partnership with him to use some of those funds for food distributions and cooking demonstrations and just getting out wellness information. And he's a big supporter of urban farming as well, which we don't we don't have a lot of support, or I should say as much support as I would like in the city of Buffalo for urban farming, but he is one of our big supporters. So we're always appreciative of him. So I guess I put this slide here to say that if you can work with your municipal leaders, you can get great support for your work. And so what we try to do when we have for our fruits and vegetables prescription program is start each season with a wellness event where we do like a cooking demonstration, and we give folks who participate everything that we've cooked, and they get to take that home and they get to try these recipes for themselves. So we try to do that 3 times a year. Once at the start of the season, once in the middle of the season, and we close out the season in November with a cooking demonstration and final market for the year. And we partnered there with some dietetic students from Buffalo State College and they prepared a nice presentation about healthy eating. So we do all of that work on a day-to-day basis, but our overarching mission and our big vision and goal is to have the first and only holistic wellness center in the city of Buffalo, which will be constructed on about 6 or 7 of the vacant city lots at our new location. And this will be a place not to duplicate clinical services, but to work with our federally funded clinic to provide things like yoga and meditation, a place for folks to go and stretch and exercise if they don't have that availability at their homes, and a whole host of other services that are sometimes lacking in underserved communities. And this will be in a highly neglected community in the city of Buffalo that hasn't seen any growth in about 25 to 30 years. And that's it.
Thank you, Allison, for sharing all of that. Now I'd like to transition to introducing Steph. Steph Wiley is a New York City born and raised founding member of Brooklyn Packers, worker-owned cooperative. He has over 20 years of entrepreneurial experience and has been a past member of the Board of Just Food, the Knick-Knock Advocacy Council, and the Knick-Knock Training Collective. Along with his work at Brooklyn Packers, Steph is helping to develop a network of cooperative homesteads. He believes that aligned movements working together in solidarity is the best way to seek justice for all in our lifetime. Thank you, Steph, for joining us.
Thanks, Melanie. Thanks, Allison. It's good to be here. Thanks, everybody, for showing up for us today. So in 2016, we started Brooklyn Packers, some colleagues and I that were working for an online food delivery service. And we formed a worker-owned cooperative called Kings County Cooperative, which later became Brooklyn Packers. What we do are pack, source, and deliver for small food delivery companies and organizations. So what we're trying to really do is create a micro food hub network in Brooklyn, locally in Bed-Stuy. We have a location in Bed-Stuy, and partly what we do is we order large amounts of food for organizations and pantries and any kind of like nonprofit that wants to provide food for its community. And we pack it and we deliver it to the locations where the communities exist. We lean towards healthier organic food or a mix of organic food, sustainably grown food, and conventional food for those who are cost sensitive. So that's one of the things that we do. For example, in the height of the pandemic, we were a part of a city contract called Get Food NYC that to deliver to people during the pandemic that were in need of food. So that's kind of the kind of work that we do in terms of like business to organization. On the other side of what we do a program called Brooklyn Supported Agriculture, which is an online ordering farm share program locally in Brooklyn and Queens. We have about 200 members that we service every week, and we have kind of a mix of the food that's there in the picture, fruit and veggies, eggs. We have some items like coffee, and we prioritize Black-owned businesses. So right now we sell a Black-owned jam, we Black-owned hot sauce. So we prioritize Black-owned businesses, and part of the way that we distribute it through Brooklyn and Queens is through locations, like business locations. So we'll take like 20 bags to a business location, and those folks in that neighborhood will come and pick up there, and we prioritize Black-owned businesses for that also. The other thing we do is home delivery for people who can't get out or people who live in neighborhoods where we don't have a location. And so that's the kind of work that we do. We also, as part of our like kind of business to organization, we customize a farm share to those folks too, so that we can offer culturally relevant food to those community. You know, not everybody likes kale. You know, not every community eats radishes. You know, so what we do is we try to source like collard greens and sweet potatoes and things of that nature for the communities that we're in. And we think that's really important in terms of food sovereignty. So like we said, we are a worker-owned cooperative in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and we think co-ops are the way to go. We think the future of business is really co-ops, and that's because on average, we have a higher sustainable revenue in relation to like what other businesses do. We have job security. We own the business together. And that creates not just jobs, but it also creates wealth. We've been open since around 2016, and through many years of changes and you know, figuring out what this business actually really wants to be, we are a Black-led and Black-owned organization. Next slide, please. So, like I was saying, Brooklyn Supported Agriculture, it's an online farm share ordering program. So it's brooklynsupportedagriculture.com. It connects people in Brooklyn to the farmers. We get our produce from Hudson Valley. We get our produce from Rocksteady Farm and Flowers. We get our produce from Oko Farms in Williamsburg. So we do a mix of like hyper-local farms, Black-owned farms, and queer LGBTQ farms up in the Hudson Valley, and just like really local farms in our region. And we're just trying to like provide diversity in our food system and the healthiest food that we can get to our neighbors in Brooklyn. So part of what I did this year was I helped start a farm, which is also a worker-owned cooperative up in Western Massachusetts. So I really wanted to understand what it was to be a farmer. As a person who's been distributing food for like five, 6 years, I really wanted to understand like what being a farmer was, so I can just have a thorough knowledge of like what happens before the food gets to me as a food distributor, and how I can like really thoroughly explain to people why it's so important that we have Black-owned farmers, and why it's important to get our food from a diverse supply chain. And so I embarked on this journey to start a farm this year. It's called Mom Bet's Freedom Farm, and it's been a really beautiful challenge, learning what it is to be a farmer. So Yeah, it's I learned that, you know, all the decisions that you need to make as being a farmer are really important. It's hard to be a farmer. It shows me that farms and food should not be cheap. You know, it's how food is how we commodify food in this food system is really not in support of healthy people and healthy planet. And so I really lived and embody that knowledge at this point. So this helps me to really like move forward in this work to help change the food supply chain in a really in a real way. Yeah. Next. So yeah, so what I believe in, what Brooklyn Packers believes in is a just and short food supply chain. Like how do we get the food from the farm as directly to the folks that need it as possible? You know, farmers want to sell their produce, and I learned this. We want to, you know, minimize the logistics. We want timely payments. We want, you know, a tight crop plan. We want flexible buyers. We want to get this food with the least, you know, blocks as possible from the farm, from the soil to the people that really need it. Next slide, please. And so like what is good about what I've learned from farming and from doing Brooklyn Packers is like, you know, as a small farm, like we just want to get the food out. So how do we have like low or no minimums in purchases? How do we prioritize seasonal produce? You know, how do we get the food to the folks? Actually, the delivery process is really important and it's often the most expensive part of the supply chain is actually getting the food from one place to the next. Next slide, please. And so we really want to like have everybody be able to eat the healthiest food possible. In my work as kind of a co-op developer, a person who like wants to open more co-ops, I feel like removing the levels of profit out of the food system is really important to keep the food affordable to the end user. Every time your food or product makes a stop, and increases the price of it. So if we just take out all the levels of stops, and that takes out the levels of profit that the businesses need to make, we can keep it as affordable as possible. And for me, affordability doesn't mean cheap. It just means like more people have access to it. Next slide. So that's a picture of our farm. It's me, myself, and my two partners, and our 6-year-old on the farm. And like I said, it's been a beautiful challenge. We've been networking with the Black farms in the Northeast, our friends at Soulfire, our friends at Wild Seed, our friends at all the Freedom Farms, Sweet Freedom Farm, Jalal, and everybody. They've really been supportive, and we're looking to broaden these relationships and the ecosystem in the seasons to come. That's us. We have work days. We were having work days in season every third Saturday. That's me with our first radish, and those are my two partners, Ashni and Diara. So some of our partners are the Black Farmer Fund, Whoop Whoop, Wild Seed, Best Eye Restoration Corporation, who has helped us get into some hospitals to get fresh produce into hospitals in Brooklyn. Grand Champs, which was our headquarters and does our distribution. Buy Better Foods, who also we distribute our Brooklyn supported agricultural farm share through. Corbin Hill Food Project, which is an organization that we partnered with on the Get Food NYC program during the pandemic, packing 4,000 boxes a week. And then Riseboro, who we provide packing, delivery, and distribution services for their Cosecha farm share program. So those are some of our current partners. We have a lot more. And this is how you can connect to the farm and to Brooklyn Packers. We're on Instagram, and you can email me. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steph. And we'll drop this information in the chat as well for those that want to hold on to it. I would encourage everybody to, if any questions have come up around the work of anything that three of us have already shared, please feel free to use that chat feature to share those thoughts. And we are going to transition into a panel with Allison and Steph. So both of you, thank you both for those dynamic presentations. Both of you are doing incredible work to ensure that our communities have what they need to truly thrive and have access to healthy food. Both of you shared a bit about what you're directly involved with, growing food in more urban environments, working on food distribution, connecting with farmers markets and pantries, and bridging the gap between urban and rural. Can you each share a bit about how you see yourself and your communities as part of the larger New York Black food system, Black food ecosystem? I'm going to start with Allison. Well, Steph, you're off mute, so maybe you're ready.
Well, I want to continue to develop the farm and also other farms. I want to create a network of Black farms that are able to sell together in New York State. So we can, kind of like an aggregation of Black farmers to be able to stay competitive with the larger farmers and the larger brands that service New York City. What I also in that effort, what I think is what I've been planning is because, I buy a lot of food for our farm share and for other people. Like, it's kind of like really working to be able to supply, the business that I co-own with my 5 partners as a worker cooperative, to make sure we have healthy food for the people who buy food from us. And also, like, for the organizations that buy food from us, like Brooklyn Movement Center and other organizations, really trying to create a larger supply of Black-owned food to service our communities. So we have continue to have culturally relevant food in our communities that's healthier than you can get down at the bodega or at the Key Food.
Yeah, so, my thing is, like, we would love to be able to supply Brooklyn Packers, but the issue is transportation. Like, it would be cost prohibitive to move our product from Buffalo down to Brooklyn. So if we could find a solution for the transportation, I feel like more of us would be able to buy and sell to and from each other. Or even if we're not buying and selling, contribute to each other. I feel like we have the alignment, and now we have a lot of connection. It's just the logistics that I think prohibit us from working closer together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's too bad. A lot of the farms that we visited through Black Farmer Fund this year, like, we would love to buy our apples from Trinity Farm. We buy a ton of apples every year. So how do we figure that out? I think that's like a really big question, and something that would be great for us to work on. It's a huge challenge, but finding solutions would be really great.
Yeah, I think I'm always thinking about that. Like, how can we, the network work together? So, and then my mind always automatically goes like, oh, we need to start our transportation co-op, like, it's like, that's how I think. So I'm like, in the background, that's kind of what I'm doing too.
Thank you for sharing that. Can you guys share what are some other challenges that is specific to your work that may not be as obvious to everyday folks? You mentioned transport. What are some other barriers that you both have kind of been experiencing?
Well, I think that, and listening to you, Allison, like, I feel like you figured out some like for-profit, nonprofit, hybrid situation, which I'm really interested in actually, because we're a for-profit business. So we don't have access to grants in the same way. So we're always looking for money. So, money, financing, and I think that's the beauty of the Black Farmer Fund is like, I was on the pilot community, and I saw how thoughtful my fellow pilot community members were in deciding like who actually can use this money, who's going to have the most impact. Like we were very thoughtful as a group on like how we decided collectively who should get this money. And so like I'm grateful to be part of the process. And I also like see how it can be replicated, and grow bigger to be able to provide more funds for more Black-owned businesses to receive money and to be able to thrive. So I think the capitalization is always a problem, especially for Black-owned businesses. And I think the Black Farmer Fund has taken a lead in figuring it out. So I look forward to like seeing what we do next.
You touched. No, you can go, Allison.
I was just going to agree with Steph, and then say another huge issue I think is manpower, getting folks to want to do this work, to understand that it can be very physical, labor intensive work, and sticking with it. So that is, along with access to capital, that is another challenge that I witness.
Thank you. I'm just writing some things down from the chat because I don't want to lose
Me
them.
Too.
Steph, you began to touch upon the collective decision-making process a bit, and I want to dive a little deeper into that. Mm-hmm. So Black Farmer Fund is a by us for us model in the sense that our staff, board, and decision-making committee reflect the very communities that we're supporting and deeply understand the needs being faced on the ground. And often we find ourselves in spaces where we have to conform to fit into a certain mold, culture, or white-led space. So can you each share a bit about what it was like being in this space and the importance of creating and building structures and institutions that have leadership and power held by community?
Yeah, there's something to when you get in a room of people who you have affinity with and how quickly you feel like family. And in family, you don't always agree. But I think what we did as a collective was really listen to each other. We all came in with a range of experience in terms of like farming and business, policy, finance, all those types of things, and all those things are important. And I think that it was a beautiful experience of like really being able to listen to each other and hear what everyone had to say, even when we disagreed, even when there was challenges. It was an important experience that I feel like in another, like if this was another group of people giving away money to people, it would have been totally different. It was a very unique experience where it wasn't really transactional. It was relational, and I think that's why it's important, and why it's important that it keeps on going.
I agree with all of that. And for me personally, having a background in insurance and finance, which is mainly dominated by white males, and then next, white females at a mid-level, mid-management level and below, not having the experience not only to work side by side with many people who look like me, but to move from that space and to have the opportunity to participate in Black Farmer Fund. I feel like when we all got in the room together, there was this just natural level of respect that the board and the management staff of BFF had chosen. And it feels like the choices were extremely intentional. And like Steph said, we didn't always agree on everything. And even when there were disagreements, like Mel, you and the staff would open up meetings and say things like, you guys have to decide. And it's like, oh yeah, we have the power. Like, we have to figure this out. Like, you kind of forget when that is not your professional experience, when you've been handed over power in a way that historically you haven't. Even with owning my own business, that was still a different space because it was a collaborative space. And what came out of it, I just think is like, it's like priceless. And even though I was brought into the pilot community to make decisions to give away, I feel like almost selfish sometimes, because I got so much out of it, you know, out of that experience that I can't put a price tag on, and that I'll have, you know, forever to move forward, both professionally and personally. So yeah, that's my takeaway. I was brought in to give, but I sometimes feel like I got more than I gave away. So.
Thank you both for sharing those reflections. And it's humbling to know that, you know, it was a mutually beneficial experience for the PC, because for us, we're like, we counted on you all so much in many different ways, and you were all so generous with your time and your expertise and investment into this process. You mentioned a little bit about, you know, some disagreements that might have come up during the community decision-making space, and I would love to hear a little bit more about what you learned from being in a community decision-making space, and why does this matter for Black farmers and communities when we think of the larger movement space and shifting power and decision-making?
I mean, I guess I can best think of it as like, you know, when we disagree, we don't need to cancel each other, you know? It's like, and I think that's what's been happening a lot in this time, you know, and especially for historically marginalized people who really need to be, and in the past had been sticking together out of necessity. You know, how did we get here? You know, how did we get to this point where capitalism has separated us in a way that is unhealthy for us as human beings, but also for us as human beings of color and the planet, which we all need. You know, yeah, it's just, you know, we just have to understand that disagreements doesn't mean that you're a bad person, you know, that, you know, yeah, it's just the amount of, I think the way that we were able to do it is we see the humanity in each of us. And when you can see the human in another person, even when they're disagreeing, that allows you to say, okay, well, I hear you, I see you. I may not agree with you, but your opinion is important and you're important. And I think that's, I feel like that's a big part of what we did in the pilot community.
you, Steph. All right. If Allison, did you want to add anything to that question, or should we transition to questions coming in from the chat?
Yeah, I think I agree with Steph. We can move to the chat.
All right. We have a question that seems to be directed at you, Steph, specifically about co-ops that have had challenges in the past when they find that their structure is hard to access financing for growth, and if you have any experiences to share on that.
Yeah, it's every business is different. We've been around for about 6 years, and with different folks, people have come and gone. But we believe in our mission to provide healthy food to folks in our local communities. And so we adapt. There have been a few grants, small, like kind of micro grants that we have had access to through Solidarity Economy, through organizations like CNIC and NICNOC and those organizations. But largely as a for-profit business, we've just been doing our best. And as a business owner, knowing that you're on this roller coaster, it's ups and downs. And as I work on cooperative, we are blessed in New York City to have a co-op ecosystem that is pretty robust in relation to the rest of the country. We're one of the biggest. New York City has one of the biggest cooperative ecosystems in the country, and so we have a lot more resources available than most states, most cities. And so, yes, could we use more money? Yes, but also a co-op is a business, So if your business is not viable, it's not viable, and you have to adapt. And so we get money when we can from folks who would like to give it to us. Otherwise, we work hard every day to bring in more money and more business, and that's how we survive.
Thank you, Steph. We have another question focused on distribution, and curious to hearing more insights about the impact of supply chain shortages and freight rates on logistical challenges, and connect to that recent conversations around the backhaul in New York State.
Yeah, we're a small business. Our supply chain has been pretty resilient, just because of the amount of things that we buy. Like I said, we're a small business, so we're not buying a Whole Foods, amount of food. We're buying for smaller organizations, and sometimes we'll need to buy for 4,000 families, but even that's possible, especially during the pandemic. That was possible because there was a lot of food available, especially in the beginning. So we haven't had that much. It hasn't been crazy for us, but this pandemic has been long, so who knows what next year will bring. And also because we're in the Northeast and our season's pretty much over, that might present a challenge in terms of getting food from warmer climates. So it's something to definitely think about.
Yeah, for us, our customers are within a 10 to 20 minute radius. So it's easy for us. As we grow and expand and want to look further out, that could become a challenge. And like I said, we can't meet our demand. So that's why the need for a second location to increase our growing space. And our demand is highly local.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Allison. Do we have any other, we have about 2 more minutes left for questions before we transition to breakout groups. Are there any other questions? We're a small group, so if you want to raise your hand, we can unmute you and you can ask your question directly. Yes, Amber.
Hi, thank you, everyone. This is not exactly a question. Is that okay? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to say I really appreciate, in particular, there was a chart that Allison shared that one of the sections talked about kind of personal traumatic and difficult experiences, domestic violence and things like that as a barrier to wellness. So I think that that is something I really appreciate kind of bringing light to that, because I do think that personal experiences can become barriers for people wanting to connect into things like this. So for example, when you talk about there being issues with personnel or people wanting to do this work, I think sometimes there's a fear where if you've come out of a traumatic family structure, there's a fear of then entering something kind of unusual like a cooperative, where you are then being invited into a new family structure with people that you don't know if you'll be safe with. So I think that that's something that I have thought about a lot that I haven't ever seen anyone mention in a conversation like this. So it's something that I would like to bring more attention to, kind of those how to get over those personal obstacles so that we can encourage more of a one-to-one trust so that people do feel more comfortable coming into community. And then with that also, you also mentioned how hard it is to do farm work. So with that as well, wanting to bring wellness solutions maybe outside of the conventional kind of, obviously we want healthcare from the system. But one of the things that I'm working on as a healing artist is wanting to bring treatments. So wanting to connect people who offer massage, who teach yoga, who offer meditation, these kinds of things, to be able to directly provide those services to farm workers so that we can, in a very immaterial way, but very profound way, make this work more sustainable. It isn't just the money and the capital. We actually need people's bodies and minds to be able to withstand continuing to do this work. And so with that, the last thing I'll say is in terms of accessing resources, capital and otherwise, I'm looking at kind of forging this cross-pollination where what I've done is I'm working through actually I'm not in New York, but a lot of New York-based arts organizations. And so I'm kind of identifying myself as an artist, and then with healing arts being kind of my discipline. And then with that, that's allowing me to get access to financial resources that I may not have been able to do if I had started a business as a yoga studio or something like that. Moving as an artist gives me a little bit of flexibility. And then what I'm hoping to do is forge these broader collaborative, cooperative kind of ecosystems with farmers where we can kind of pull money in from places that may not have been available to farm people, and then also pull in these more immaterial support services as well. So that's just, I kind of wanted to plant that seed, because the more I'm listening, I'm like, I really think something really cool can happen with all of this. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Amber. Melanie, can I respond to that? So I didn't mention it just because of time, but the farm that I helped start, My Best Freedom Farm, we actually are like a sanctuary farm. We grow food, absolutely, but also people come and spend time there. They camp there. The farm is medicine. We are a short walk to a waterfall, to a brook. We're growing, literally growing medicine. I mean, mugwort is everywhere. Mullein is everywhere. Tulsi is everywhere. Like, we have all like, it's wild and we have been growing it. So we've been creating medicines, tinctures, etc., from the things that grow naturally on our earth and the land that we're stewarding. And we also have built a sweat lodge. So we've had a sweat every month pretty much since, I guess, June on the land. And so I firmly believe that the path that you're on is 100% correct. Thank you, Amber.
Yeah, thank you, Amber. I appreciate your statement and support with your words. That's great.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to transition into breakout rooms. We have a question. We have two questions that we're going to ask you all to kind of go into these breakout rooms and each take a few minutes just to kind of discuss. We'll have 12 minutes for this portion of the event. And I'm going to drop the question in the chat right now. And we'll also share it out again once you guys separate. That sounds good, Onika. Thank you.
If anyone wants to go to a room but can't figure out how, I'm able to move you.
Well, the room that I was in, I was just by myself.
And hi,
Okay.
Anika, this is Leah. I just got kicked out and I'm trying to get back in.
Okay, Leo, do you remember which room you were in?
I think Steph was in it,
Okay, let me look for
if that
that.
helps.
Yeah, that's a lot. Thank you. I'm sending you to room
Okay.
3.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, John, there's somebody in every room now, so I'm going to reassign you, okay?
Yeah, me too.
Okay. And freedom. Okay, let's move you to about that. 304. Would be 10 would be 14.
Sorry, Brian, you didn't finish your statement. You're on
Thank
mute,
you.
brother.
Just how happy it makes me to see, because so far, I mean, like you said, you hit it. There's a lot of people who already have a lot of power who are benefiting from cannabis, and so to see that, to see a little bit more equity in the benefits is, yeah, fantastic.
Thank you for participating in that breakout activity. My group was popping. We were talking about a lot of different things, what it looks like to have more of a participatory role in the food system, wanting to grow our own medicine and heal our communities ourselves. So I want to create space for those that want to share something that stood out to them or something that came up during your breakout discussion. You can just unmute yourself. We're a pretty small group. No pressure.
Okay. Hi, I'm Angelina. We kind of started off our conversation talking about just the food system in general and our individual choices in the food system. So like at the grocery store, and how a lot of times the purchases that you make at grocery stores or the things you buy, the things you invest in, may seem like a neutral choice, may seem like there are all these things laid out in front of you and they're already there and they're going to be there regardless of if you buy them or not. So making specific choices for organic or for locally grown and harvested doesn't seem as much of a choice. And it seems kind of just like a neutral place to be as a consumer. And we were talking about how that takes a lot of the agency off of the consumer, right? Because there's supply and demand. If there's demand for a product, most often supply will go up. And so in grocery stores, if something doesn't sell at all because all the customers refuse to buy it, 9 out of 10 times the grocery store is not going to continue to stock it. And so understanding the nuances of the food system and how deeply interconnected everything is really illuminates how much agency and power consumers have as part of the food system. So we were just kind of discussing stuff like that.
Can I comment on that, Mel?
Yeah, this is a open session, so anyone can react to what another person says or share something different.
So Angelina, your point is well taken, and I'm not sure who's familiar with Wegmans grocery stores, but that is one of our large grocers in Western New York, and they are in parts of New York City and Maryland and places like that. But during COVID, brought a lot of folks together on a task force, and they were explaining that the demand for organic was decreasing and the demand for local was increasing, and they needed to respond to that. So it's so true that, you know, it sounds cliche sometimes when we say, you know, speak to causes with your dollars, but that's a clear example of how that is true. And you do see more local produce in that grocery store than you did even like 2 years ago. So it does have a big impact.
Brian, do you want
I
to
think
add
that's
something?
so I think that's so interesting. And then layering on that, the conversation of worker-owned co-op, because I feel like the conversation around organic is so focused on the food and the product, and then more so that conversation of local produce and worker-owned co-op and sort of like who's owning it's. So it's more focused on like the people behind it, right? The humans that are a part of this system. And that's just an interesting like trajectory of where the focus of value or priority is. Yeah, that's just very interesting.
Yeah, no, I think I would like to build on that as well. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a sort of time-honored tradition in our society to place the burden of these systemic failures on individuals. And so, yeah, I hear what you're saying, that we can make a food choice or make a choice with our dollars and speak with our money. But at the same time, it's just a drop in a huge bucket, you know, that our food system is broken, and the way it creates these environmental justice issues is not by accident. I mean, that is a feature of the system that we live in. And so for us to, I think, certainly making these purchases and work, spending our money with organizations that have the story to tell, and certainly making sure that story is true is absolutely true. But what we really need is a true systemic change and a shift to more values-based systems. And I don't think that can happen without a shift to, you know, regional and local, particularly local, you know, solidarity, economy, worker equity, businesses. Even with organic, you know, there's no worker protection standards in organic product in organic certification. And so, you know, you're still getting workers that are being exploited, still getting the environment in some cases that is being exploited. You know, you can buy your organic raspberries that have been shipped up from Chile for cheaper than, well, certainly out of season, but oftentimes it's cheaper to do that than to buy from a local farmer. And that's because so many of those costs have been externalized to the environment and to society. And so, yeah, I mean, I just think like we need to be building systems based on trust and based on understanding and recognition. And, you know, I know the CSA that we buy from has just blown up since the pandemic started because people started buying local. You know, when prices started going up at the grocery store, people were looking for other options. And now suddenly that local CSA that we bought into at the beginning of the pandemic, this was last year, you know, the price is starting to equal out, which isn't really, I mean, me personally, I don't care about that, but I think a lot of people are discovering that when you have food that hasn't been commodified in the same way, that it's got a soul, and it's not just a story, but it tastes better, and it's easier to prepare, and it's just there's so much more to it than what you're getting in the grocery store. And don't get me wrong, I love Wegmans. My wife is from Rochester. If she heard me say something bad about Wegmans, I'd probably be sleeping out in the yard. But at the same time, I mean, Wegmans is a good. I'll just leave my Wegmans commentary there. But I mean, at the same time, we need to be making. And I don't know how to do this. I'm just sort of ranting, I guess, a little bit. But how do we shift the system so that it's working for people, for the environment, and for society, and not just for shareholders and stakeholders, and certainly cooperatives and you know, worker equity business models are a big part of that. But so is creating spaces within suburban and urban areas to be producing food and you know, making policies that work for people. So I'll just, before I suck up all the time, I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Brian. There was a lot of nuggets in that. I'm going to pass to Amber, and then we're going to transition to hearing some final words from our panelists.
Before I go, is there anyone who hasn't said anything, who wants to say something, who would rather have this time? Just because I've already said a lot of things. Okay. So, oh, is that someone? Okay.
No, you got the floor, sister.
Thank you.
Rule the world. Let's do it.
Thank you. All I was going to say is I think that what we're all kind of pointing to is that the relationship building part of this. And I think it's just very interesting that we are in a culture where we don't even consider not having a relationship with someone who is giving us food, you know, the primary thing that we need to live. We've been so conditioned to not even consider who touched this, what kind of thoughts did someone have while they were cultivating this. So I think that just a very, very primary, that aspect of education needs to be something that we start to really push. Like, really, I think that the big paradigm shift or whatever it is something very small, just starting to really consider and ask people and guide people to think about how much trust and faith we put into something so important. And so I think that the relationship building, and when we talk about organic versus local and all of this, I remember going to a farmer's market and actually stopping to speak to the person who I was getting some kale or something from. And I go, you know, is this organic? And he's like, well, what do you mean by that? And I was like, oh, I don't even know what I'm asking you actually, because I go in a grocery store and I see a sticker with a word on it that a corporation made up to then force farmers to pay extra money to get a certification sticker. So he started explaining to me about the fertilizer and the soil and the this and the that, and what has chemicals and what is a chemical, and what is, you know, what things he could get around and not get around in the growing process. So I think these little bits of information, so all of that is to say, if I can have a local farmer who I can speak directly to and say, how did this fruit come to be? Can you explain it to me? What did you use? And to build more trust and to have more fidelity in that relationship building versus going into a big building and seeing a sticker that says organic. So I think the education, there needs to be a lot of education around what all this stuff is and what it means and how it works.
Thank you, Amber. I'm going to pass to Steph and Allison to share final words with our audience, with our participants today.
Sure. Thank you all for coming to this panel, listening to what we have to say. It's really important. Some a few things that are happening with Brooklyn Packers and the farm. The farm is about to be put to sleep, but we are doing some fundraising right now, which you can see on our Instagram page, Mumbet's Freedom Farm. And then Brooklyn Packers, we are about to launch also some fundraising because we want to build a new website. And so look out for that. We're also embarking on a compost delivery pickup service soon. So we're excited about that at Brooklyn Packers, where we'll leave you a bucket to put your compost in and then come collect it. So all that stuff is happening right now. And again, thank you. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Steph.
Steph. Yeah, we have a lot going on. You can visit us at buffalogogreen.org. You can donate there. And it was great to be able to share and hear what folks are thinking and how they're participating in the food system, because I think it's important that we all remember that we all are parts of the food system in some way or another. So yeah, thank you for listening, and thanks, Mel, for putting this together and inviting us. Thanks, Steph.
Thank you both for your time. Thank you all for engaging and being so engaged in this entire session with all your questions and comments and reflections. Thank you, Nisog, for inviting Black Farmer Fund and our pilot community members to this space. And thank you, Onika, who's been an amazing tech support host throughout. And we hope to keep in touch with everybody. So you have our email addresses in the chat for all of our work. I'll drop mine right now as well. And yes, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.